Don't forget to like and subscribe. The Mysterious Motel in Nebraska. It was a summer road trip that my family and I had been looking forward to for months. My parents, my brother, and I all piled into the car, ready for an adventure that would take us across the country to California. The plan was to take it slow, enjoy the sights, and stop whenever we felt like it. But as we crossed into Nebraska, things started to take an unexpected turn. The sun had long set, and as we drove through the rolling plains, the phone service began to drop off, becoming progressively worse. Our phones couldn't hold a signal, and before we knew it, we were driving blind, completely disconnected from the world. It was well past midnight, and we were all exhausted from a full day of driving. My brother was dozing off in the back seat, and my parents were quietly chatting, but everyone could feel the fatigue setting in. We all agreed it was time to find a place to rest for the night, but with no reception, we had no way of searching for hotels. We decided to take the next exit, hoping that something would be available. It was a dark, isolated stretch of road, and when we got off the freeway, it became even more desolate. We were surrounded by cornfields and trees, stretching for miles in every direction. I remember feeling uneasy as the quiet seemed to close in on us. After what felt like an eternity, we came upon a tiny town, barely a dot on the map. The town had a gas station, a couple of restaurants, and the motel. The sign outside the motel advertised rooms for only $25 a night, which seemed unbelievably cheap. It looked rundown, but we were all too tired to care. The thought of spending the night on the road any longer was unbearable. The motel was a single-story building, maybe a dozen rooms at the most. The parking lot was almost empty, with just a few cars scattered about. We parked, and my dad went inside to check in. I stayed in the car with my brother, wondering how a place this far out in the middle of nowhere could even stay in business. A few minutes later, my dad came out with the room key. He led us inside, and I instantly noticed how old the place was. The wallpaper was peeling, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. But there were 2 beds, a TV, and a bathroom, so we made the best of it. I immediately flipped on the TV, hoping for a little distraction. The screen flickered, and I was greeted by an ancient box TV with only 8 channels. It felt like a relic from another time. I asked my dad for the Wi-Fi code, but he told me the motel didn't offer Wi-Fi. I was disappointed, but at that point, I just wanted to sleep. We all settled in, and within minutes, we were all asleep. The day had worn us out, and we fell into a deep, much-needed slumber. However, my sleep didn't last long. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a strange noise. At first, it was just a faint sound in the distance, but then it became clearer. The doorknob to our room was rattling. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. Someone was trying to get in. I glanced at my brother and parents, but they were still asleep. I didn't want to alarm them, so I decided to stay still and listen. The rattling stopped for a moment, but then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate steps, approaching the window. My stomach dropped. I was too curious to ignore it. I quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to the window. I pulled the blinds back just enough to peek outside. What I saw made my blood run cold. A man was standing right outside, staring at me through the window. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his face was unnervingly close to the glass. I froze, terrified. I pulled back from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. But the man didn't leave. Instead, he moved to the door and tried the knob again. Then he began pounding on the door, hitting it hard with his fists. I didn't know what to do. I rushed to wake my dad, but when I turned to look at him, I saw that he was already awake, likely startled by the noise. He got up and walked to the door, yelling at the man to leave. The pounding stopped for a few seconds, and then, just when we thought it was over, the man started again, hitting the door with even more force. My brother and mom woke up, and we all huddled together, terrified. The pounding lasted for what seemed like forever, and then, finally, the man's footsteps faded as he walked away. We didn't hear anything else after that, but none of us could sleep. We lay there in silence, our nerves on edge. By morning, we debated whether to leave, but we decided to stick it out until sunrise. At around 7 a.m., my dad went to the front desk to report the incident. To our surprise, the staff didn't seem to care much at all. It was as if this kind of thing happened regularly, and they were used to it. We left as quickly as possible, and it wasn't until we were about an hour down the road that we finally regained phone service. The rest of the trip went off without a hitch, but that strange, unsettling experience stayed with me. I still think about it to this day, wondering who that man was and what his intentions had been. Story 2. The creepy woman at the motel. It was late into the night when I decided to stop for the night during one of my business trips. I had been on the road for hours, and fatigue was starting to take over. I had one more hour to go before I would reach my destination, but I could barely keep my eyes open. I didn't want to push myself too far, so I decided to pull off at the next available exit and find a place to stay for the night. I came across a small, roadside motel that seemed like it would do just fine for a short rest. It was quiet, and the parking lot was mostly empty. There were maybe a dozen rooms in total, and a small office where you would check in. The building looked old, but it didn't seem completely run down. I walked into the office to find it empty, but the bell on the desk was old, and the room had a strange vibe. There were fake trees set up in the corners of the room, adding to the odd atmosphere. I waited for a moment, thinking someone would come out, but after a minute or two, I rang the bell, hoping to get someone's attention. Still, nobody appeared. I waited longer, growing increasingly frustrated. I was tired, and I didn't want to keep driving, but this place was giving me the creeps. I looked around, trying to figure out what to do. There was a small door behind the desk, leading to a back room that seemed empty. I wasn't sure if I should go in or leave, but after a few more moments, I decided to search for a different hotel. As I was heading back to my car, I looked back at the front desk one last time. And that's when I saw her. A woman's face was pressed up against the window, staring at me with an eerie, unsettling smile. Her eyes were wide open, and her grin was more terrifying than friendly. She didn't blink, and she didn't move. I froze for a moment, not sure if I was seeing things. My heart skipped a beat, and I didn't wait another second. I jumped into my car, started the engine, and sped away from the motel. I didn't look back, but that woman's face stayed with me for a long time. When I got home, I looked up the motel online, and what I found sent a shiver down my spine. The motel had been closed down the very same day I had stayed there. I don't know what happened that night or who that woman was, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that I narrowly escaped something much darker. Story 3. The old couple and the motel invasion. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I were on a road trip, making our way through small towns on our way to the coast. We had been driving all day, and as nightfall approached, we realized we needed to find a place to stop. We stumbled upon an old, charming motel that seemed to have a lot of character. The building was painted in bright colors, and there were plants and trees surrounding the entrance, giving it a warm, welcoming feel. It was definitely an older place, but it looked well maintained, and the friendly owners seemed like the kind of people you'd want to help out. We went inside and were greeted by an elderly couple who owned the motel. They were kind and talkative, and we spent a while chatting with them about our trip. They told us they had bought the place a couple of years ago and had worked hard to fix it up. We didn't mind that the place was a bit old, there was a certain charm to it, and the couple seemed so genuinely nice. They gave us a key to our room, and we made our way down the hall. Our room wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable enough. After we unpacked, we watched TV for a while before deciding to get some sleep. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. I thought maybe it was my girlfriend getting up to use the bathroom, but when I looked around, she was still fast asleep. The footsteps kept going, and they sounded like they were getting closer. I lay there, not sure if I should say something or just wait. But then, my blood ran cold. I looked up and saw the old couple standing at the foot of our bed, staring at us. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They were both smiling, but it wasn't a comforting smile, it was unsettling and unnatural. I asked them what they were doing in our room, and my girlfriend woke up, visibly alarmed. The old woman calmly explained that they just wanted to make sure we were comfortable and sleeping well. I was in shock. I told them to get out, and my girlfriend immediately grabbed her phone to call the police. The old man kept apologizing, but it didn't seem sincere. When the police arrived, the couple admitted to using a spare key to enter our room, but they continued to claim they were just checking on us. We didn't press charges, but the whole situation felt off. The police left, and we spent the rest of the night on edge. The next morning, we found out that the motel had been shut down shortly after. I'm still not sure what those old people were really up to, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never forget that night.